The doors of the shuttle were closing, and I was still outside. Smoke rolled across the landing pad. Alarms screamed from every direction. I had one hand pressed against the metal hull, and I was shouting a name that no longer meant anything to the person who owned it. Ivra Voss did not look back. She stood inside the shuttle, framed by soft white light, her guards pulling the hatch shut inch by inch. Her face showed no fear, no guilt, nothing at all. Just mild irritation, like I was a delay in her schedule, instead of the man who had spent the last 6 hours keeping her alive. "Move," one of her guards said, shoving me back with the flat of his weapon. "There's still time," I said. "Open the door." The hatch sealed with a soft click, almost polite, as if it hadn't just decided my fate. Through the small window, Ivra turned her head toward me for exactly 1 second. Then she turned away, and the engines fired, and the wind from the launch threw me flat on my back on the scorched pad, alone, surrounded by enemies who did not consider me worth a clean death. That was 2 years ago. Today, Ivra Voss needs an escort again, and this time, she is walking straight toward me without knowing it. I was hired for that first job through a contract office that placed humans as guards for foreign dignitaries. It paid well because no one else wanted it. The planet was hostile, the politics were worse, and the client was a princess from a house that saw humans the way you see a tool you rent and return. I did not expect gratitude. I expected a paycheck. What I got instead was an ambush from a rival house, 3 hours into a 4-hour visit, and a princess who left me on the ground the moment the numbers stopped favoring her. I do not remember every detail of the hours after that. I remember running. I remember hiding in a drainage channel beneath the city, breathing through torn fabric to filter the air. I remember counting my own heartbeat just to stay calm, because panic gets people killed faster than anything chasing them. What I remember most clearly is the decision. Somewhere in that channel, soaked and freezing, I decided I was not going to die because someone else decided I was replaceable. I was found 2 days later, not by rescuers, but by the very people who had staged the ambush. They were mercenaries, contracted killers who worked outside any official house, loyal to coin and reputation instead of blood. Their leader, a woman named Petra Coin, looked at me the way you look at something unexpected that refuses to break. "You should be dead," she said. "I noticed that too," I told her. She did not kill me. She studied me instead, the way a person studies a tool they had not expected to find useful. Humans were rare in that part of the galaxy, mostly hired as disposable escorts, never as anything more. Petra Coin saw something different. She saw someone who had survived 2 days in hostile territory with no support, no weapon beyond what he improvised, and no reason to expect help from anyone. She offered me a place, not out of kindness, out of curiosity. I took it because I had nothing left to return to. The next months were the hardest of my life. I trained with people who did not believe in mercy, because mercy was not something the galaxy had shown them either. I learned to read terrain the way others read language. I learned that the difference between the strongest species and the smartest one is not always what people assume. Every alien I worked beside had faster reflexes, stronger bodies, better instincts bred over thousands of years of evolution suited to their worlds. What I had was different. I had the ability to adapt faster than any of them expected, to keep thinking clearly when everything around me said to stop. Petra Coin used to say, humans were dangerous, not because we were strong, but because we refused to know when we were beaten. I earned a name in that world, though it was not the name I was born with. They called me the Mountain, because I did not move once I decided to hold a position, and because the people who tried to push me off one eventually stopped trying. Contracts came in from every direction. Some I took, some I refused. I built a reputation for reliability, which in that part of the galaxy was worth more than any weapon. Clients who hired me knew one simple truth: I did not leave. I built something more than a reputation. I built a place, carved into the side of a mountain range on a border world that no single house fully controlled. It became a shelter for outcasts, mercenaries, and anyone the galaxy had decided to throw away. People who had been left behind, the way I once was, found their way there. Over time, that mountain stopped being just a hideout. It became a fortress, run by people who understood exactly what it meant to be abandoned, and exactly what it took to make sure it never happened to them again. I never expected to hear the name Ivra Voss again. Her house was powerful, her family connected across a dozen worlds, and I assumed our paths would simply never cross. I was wrong. Word reached me through one of my contacts, a broker named Callum Reyes, who dealt in information instead of weapons. He told me that House Voss was collapsing. The same rivals who had staged that first ambush 2 years ago had grown stronger, patient, and far more organized. They no longer wanted to embarrass the house. They wanted to end it. Ivra's father was gone. Her allies were falling away one by one, and the empire that once protected her had quietly decided she was no longer worth the cost of defending. She had become exactly what she once called me: disposable. Desperate and out of options, her remaining advisors reached out to the most reliable independent contractor in the region. They did not know they were reaching out to me. They knew only the name the galaxy had given me, and the reputation that came with it. I agreed to the meeting, not because I wanted the contract, but because I wanted to see her face when she understood who she was asking for help. She arrived at my mountain 3 days later, escorted by 2 guards who looked far less confident than the ones who had shoved me away from that shuttle years before. Ivra Voss stepped out of her transport into the cold mountain air, wrapped in a traveling coat that did nothing to hide how thin and tired she had become. She looked around at the fortress carved into stone, at the armed figures watching from the ridgelines, and I could see the calculation running behind her eyes. She was trying to understand how a place like this existed and why it felt so familiar. Then she saw me standing at the entrance, and everything in her expression changed at once. "You," she said, the word barely above a whisper. "Me," I said. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The wind moved between us, carrying the smell of snow and stone. Her guards shifted uneasily, unsure whether to reach for their weapons or step back. "I did not know," she said finally. "I did not know it was you." "That's the part that bothers me most," I told her. "Not that you left me. People make choices under pressure. What bothers me is that you never wondered what happened after." She had no answer for that. I watched her search for one anyway, the way people do when they know the truth will not help them. "I need protection," she said instead. "My house is falling. I have nowhere else to turn." "I know," I said. "That's why you're here." I brought her inside, not because I forgave her, but because turning her away at the gate would have made me no better than the choice she made 2 years ago. Inside the mountain, she saw the people I had gathered around me, humans and aliens alike, all of them united by the same experience of being left behind by someone who was supposed to protect them. I watched her realize, slowly, that she was standing in the middle of everyone the galaxy had ever discarded, and that every one of them now looked at her the way she once looked at me. That night, I sat across from her in a quiet stone room lit by a single lantern. "You could have left me," I said. "That's not what haunts me. What haunts me is that you never once thought I might survive. You assumed I was already gone before the shuttle door even closed." "I was wrong," she said quietly. "Yes," I said, "you were." I told her I would protect her, not because the debt between us had been forgiven, but because I refused to become the kind of person who abandoned someone in need, even someone who had once abandoned me. I told her the protection came with conditions. She would stay within the mountain until her house recovered, or fell completely. She would learn what it meant to depend on people, without the safety of rank or title standing between her and the consequences of her choices. She agreed, because she had no other option left. In the weeks that followed, I watched her change. She trained with the mercenaries who had once ambushed her. She learned their names, their histories, the reasons they ended up on a mountain instead of a palace. Slowly, the woman who once looked at me like a tool became someone who understood, for the first time, what it felt like to be seen as replaceable. Her house did not survive in the end, but she did. When the last of her family's holdings dissolved into the hands of rivals, she chose to stay on the mountain rather than seek shelter anywhere else. She became one of us, not because she was forgiven completely, but because she had finally learned the lesson that circumstance had once tried to teach her the hard way. I think about that shuttle door sometimes, the way it sealed shut with that quiet, indifferent click. She thought that moment ended something. In truth, it only began it. She once believed humans did not last long in a galaxy built for stronger, older species. She was not entirely wrong. The man she left behind on that landing pad did not last either. He became something else instead,